Week 2, 2023 NFL season. We are back with Cris and Ron, and Ted is in from Sports USA Live. How you doing, Theodore?
Excellent, sir. It's good to be back week 2, and we got a couple of pretty good matchups coming for you on Sports USA. We'll talk about in depth today.
Boy, if I had my act together, I'd be scrolling better, but I'm not.
Well, the first game is going to be Baltimore at Cincinnati, and I think it doesn't matter what year this current version of both teams. It's always a great matchup, even though Baltimore's had their issues against them. Let's just put it that way. They've lost 4 of the last 5, including 2 of the last 3 games last season, and that wild card game. So there's a little revenge on Baltimore's mind, but they've got some injury issues again. And I don't know what Harbaugh's putting in the water over there, but it ain't good. You lose J.K. Dobbins in week 1, another bad season-ending injury, Achilles injury, and it's getting ridiculous. It's put 3 years now. Every start of the season, that team roster is getting destroyed, and it's really too bad because, as we talked about last week, I like them a lot this year, but I don't like them a lot this week. Not now, and they got some injuries again that they're going to keep some key guys out. What do you think, Ron?
Well, good morning, fellas. Nice to do the Friday show again. It's the AFC North, and every game matters. Every game's a bloodbath. Every time you play Pittsburgh, except for last week, I guess, and every time you play Baltimore, it's a physical game, and these are games to look forward to. And like you said, Baltimore's going to be down 2 offensive line starters, at least 1 guy in the secondary. Their lead running back, the guy with the best yards per carry average, is gone. And 3rd year in a row that Cincy's completely healthy, but also the 3rd year in a row that Cincy has gotten off to a very slow start. A lot of it is predictable based on the fact Super Bowl blahs, Joe Burrow missing some time with injury, not getting repeatable throws during the preseason. So we don't know if he's ready right now, but I can tell you this is an important game. They all are in that division.
Yep.
Well, I'm going to give myself a kick in the nuts because I fell for the banana in the tailpipe, and I've got Baltimore futures, and it's quite frustrating. So I'm kicking myself in the nuts. I think Burrow's injured.
I don't.
Ted?
Nope.
You think he's 100% healthy?
You know what? If he's 93% healthy, he's fine. No, I think he's okay. We got an interview coming up. I think this is typical. We talked a little bit about it last week. First of all, it's already proven. We've been here for 3 minutes, and it's overreaction week 2. Okay. So
I'm not overreacting. I'm just worried.
I'm going to take the middle ground.
Ron, did you get him his pills, by the way? Because he needs to relax.
I'm going to take the middle ground here. I saw Joe Burrow, and this was a prop that I had discussed with some other people. We went under 9.5 yards rushing last week because we didn't think with his injury, there was no way, he just wasn't going to run. I'm looking, he ran 1 time for -1 yards last week. We're going to know when Joe Burrow is better by how many times he takes off and runs during a game. That's going to be the biggest clue, in my opinion. Look for that. If he's not running this week, he's not ready, like Cris said.
Right, but you also said that you expect Russell Wilson to run a lot, and he had 1 rush last week for 1 yard. As I said,
true.
He doesn't want to get hit anymore. It's over. I'm not saying he can't play. His run game is going to be a little bit hit and miss, if you'll pardon the pun.
Okay, well, we won't talk about Russell Wilson because it's not one of our 2 games.
Just thought I'd throw that in there.
The Peyton Russell Wilson divorce papers are going through as we speak.
By the way, let's talk about a little bit last night's game, okay? We were going to mention that Philadelphia ran through and around Minnesota all night long until a backdoor cover was needed, and Cris was on the headsets making sure they took care of business late, and you got away with that one. but Minnesota's got some issues this year. You know, Brian Flores, their new defensive coordinator, I thought they'd be a little bit better, and they couldn't stop the run at all last night. And so that was a major issue for them. And now they're 0-2 in a tough division with Detroit and maybe Green Bay, not Chicago, of course. Anyway, Philadelphia has looked really average. They're the most average-looking 2-0 team in the league, and that's how good they are.
And they face nobody, so we can't even take advantage of knowing how weak they are by betting against them, because they play also. They have Tampa Bay next. I know that.
Yeah, well, you know, you beat who you can beat. It's the next game, so you worry about that later. But they're still going to be a quality team. Whether or not the new coordinators have really affected them it's way too early to tell. But they just look a little out of sync. They're not the same team, but they are really good. And last time I checked, Dalvin Cook with the Jets would look really good in a Vikings jersey right now. They could have used him last night badly. Their run game was a joke.
My take on that game was that turnovers matter. Minnesota -3 in the first game against Tampa, Minnesota -3 against Philly. Minnesota, honestly, with even it's obvious with even turnovers, they'd be 2-0. I'm not worried about Minnesota. I'm not worried about Brian Flores. I am worried about their running game, and they just don't have the right defensive personnel. They've never had enough defensive personnel. I think Flores is an upgrade, and I think if not for all these fumbles, they'd be 2-0 and we wouldn't be talking about this at all.
Well, maybe, but last time I checked, fumbles and interceptions count.
I think aren't they -6 on the turnovers, but they're only -9 on the point differential for the season.
Yeah, but it's the same old story. You know, their point differential last year was the weirdest of all time, and now it's turning around, going the other way. And that's what we expected too, though, isn't it? That we talked about that last year. Wait till next season what happens with Minnesota if they are in the similar kind of a game structure, and their point differential will totally change because they had a lot of lucky bounces last year.
So for people that are not familiar with the Inside Blitz show on Friday, we focus on a couple of games before we get into some other stuff. The first game, obviously, is Cincinnati and Baltimore. And we are fortunate enough to be able to feed or help suggest questions for Ted to ask so we can get a little extra insight into the games. And as I mentioned last week, kind of boring to me, like a first look sort of thing last season. Wasn't really into it, kind of went with it. But once we learned how to work it in our favor, we got a lot of good information, the kind of stuff we wanted to know. And it turned into some wins and some bets we made. So I'm not sure we got anything out of it necessarily last week, but we will get some good stuff out of it throughout the course of the season. Ted, what do you have up for us first?
Well, Cincinnati's Tyler Boyd, I spoke to him a couple of days ago. Actually, it was yesterday, come to think of it. One of the things about Tyler is that, he rounds out a solid, better than a solid, much better than average receiving room. And, he's the old guy in the room now, which is interesting because, I've been talking to him this is his 8th year, and I've been talking to him every year. I've had him on my Sports USA pregame show, and we sort of joked about that a little bit, but I think he fills us in a little bit on what the mindset of this team was last week. The rain definitely affected the game. The coach talked about it too, that it was a weird driving, strange rain where, it affects both teams, but Burrow had troubles with it. The ball was slipping out of his hands, and he never got it going the entire game. And their run game never got it going the way they would normally like to set things up too. They had a lot of bad third down situations, and they did nothing. They looked awful last week. They're much better than that, we know. So they already got rid of one of their offensive linemen. Lyle Collins is sent packing. So they're restructuring a little bit there. But I like that. I thought that Tyler was very candid, and you can play that anytime you want.
Well, it looks like a chance of rain showers, so that could complicate things. Let's hear what he has to say here.
Here in Cincinnati, you've mostly been just a heck of a durable receiver. How's the health coming along this season?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Never better.
Well, that's good. So what happened to that offense, rainy Cleveland? Burrow had 82 yards, a career low. You caught the only 2 targets of 14 thrown to you and T. Higgins. Had to be a tough week to deal with.
Yeah, we just came out to a slow start. We were super flat coming out. The weather could have played a part, but at the end of the day, you got to kind of weather the storm. And we just didn't kind of establish the run game or the pass game. We didn't get anything going for ourselves. So that's kind of what led up to the disaster of a game that we had.
Is it fair to say that Joe was rusty? Because it's the second straight year he didn't really have a normal training camp with that calf injury.
Yeah, right. Yeah, the last couple of training camps he hasn't been fully go, and I don't know if planning preseason plays a big part in that. That's what everybody been preaching. But if we'd have played one game, it would have been only one game, one drive. So still kind of don't do too much different, And yeah, I don't know. I don't kind of know what Joe's mentality is, but I mean, each and every week and every time Joe sets on the field, we all believe that we have a winning chance. We all have a winning mentality because of how good he has been, despite having this tough game, still week 1, and we know that he'll bounce back and he'll play unbelievable this week.
Coach Taylor stressed also how Cleveland handled the rain better. How much was that truly a factor in that game?
Yeah, it was huge. Especially with the timing and the routes and what we were trying to establish. I knew Joe threw a couple balls where it just slipped out his hands, and it just felt like at that point he was kind of worried and was thinking a little bit about the throws he was making. Even a little bit of majority of the RPOs that we caught up where he should have pulled and threw, and a lot of them around the perimeter he didn't take, which he normally would because he does a great job of just reading the defense and understanding what they're trying to do to us. So we just kind of never really got nothing going for him to get comfortable and seeing things. And on top of that, they had a great game plan. They rushed us every third down, manned us up, and just kind of didn't let Joe sit back there and get a rhythm.
So you guys throw away the tape, or did you actually watch it? Because how much can you learn from it?
Yeah, we had to watch it. It's a lot of learning things that we could have done better. Despite balls not coming to the receivers, we still could have ran routes better. At the end of the day, based off of the coverage and what we can change as a unit, as an individual person. I feel like I could have ran a lot of different routes differently, but at the end of the day, like you said, once you don't get them targets or we don't get them balls in the air to try to complete things and put the ball where they need to be to make those plays, then you kind of just out there. But it's always a learning tool with the wins or losses.
We're with Bengals receiver Tyler Boyd, 8th season in Cincinnati. Is that almost
I thought it was pretty strange how he said, "Well, I don't really know where his head is," or something.
Well, I mean, you can't get into somebody else's head.
I know it's just strange.
I don't know. There's always a part of I don't want to say too much to speak for the other guy. It's always going to be, especially when the other guy is the quarterback you're talking about. So he's being a little extra careful there. But further on into the interview, we got into much more as far as the not just the conditions there, but the importance of coming home this week. They felt that they had a hard time with the conditions, with the rain. They were not getting the signals right. They couldn't hear each other. It was a sort of a confusing kind of a game. And both Coach Taylor and Tyler told me that we're thrilled to be home. We don't have to worry about any of that crap. And we'll be back to a normal situation here. So that came into play. Also, there's the revenge factor for Baltimore, but revenge can only take you so far. You still got to outplay the other team, and now you're going to their field. They know each other so well. They don't have to spend a ton of time prepping for each side because they know each other like they're cousins.
Well, I do want to comment. The technical issues we had before the show did not allow us time to edit. So we're going to probably summarize some of each of these videos. but
Audios.
audios.
Yes.
Baltimore actually was in the game last year with the third string quarterback and could have won.
Yep.
And, I think both of those games actually Cincinnati wasn't able to just roll over them. I know one of them they did near the end, but Baltimore could have came away with those. Baltimore seems to have their number somewhat.
Well, with Lamar, they do. He's 6-1 against them.
Yeah, but most of those were before Burrow came too, though.
Well, not most of them. I mean, there's a bunch of Burrow's been there long enough. Look, the bottom line is that if Baltimore's healthy, they can play with anybody. But there's going to be holes in there this week, so we'll see.
Ron, what do you say?
One thing that you asked Tyler Boyd was really telling about last week's game, and that's two catches between T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. T. Higgins was thrown to 8 times with no catches, which is a real outlier. I have a feeling that T. Higgins is going to be more involved in this particular game plan. Boyd is more of the underneath target because before there was a T. Higgins and before there was a Jamar Chase, you had Boyd as a number 1 guy, if you could believe it. And he was never really a number 1, but he's an extremely high-end number 3. But now he's the underneath guy to these other guys. So
there was an A.J. Green, if I remember.
There was an A.J. Green, but an aging A.J. Green.
Yeah, exactly.
So
but he was still
Boyd was getting more touches in that way. But what we're talking about right now is the fact that Boyd and Higgins are going to be a focal point of this because Baltimore is depleted in the secondary. Baltimore is depleted in a lot of places, but they're depleted in the secondary. That means they're going to have to decide what's the one receiver we don't want to beat us. And we know that's going to be Chase. So I do expect Boyd and Higgins to get in the game plan. Totally. And if history is correct, because you had 2 really good guests last week and they both dominated, maybe we have the same thing this time. Tyler Boyd goes off for 7 catches for 55 yards or something like that. But that's got to be the game plan. But again, it's all back to Burrow. How much mobility is he willing to have right now?
Yeah, well, Baltimore leads the NFL in rush yards per game. And it's going to be interesting to see how that changes now.
Well, as Bertie pointed out, Baltimore has a lot of experience playing with these injuries. It's just getting so tiresome. As far as a position on this game, for me,
still 3.5.
The current line is like a strong 3 or weak 3.5. It just keeps bouncing back and forth. The total's gone up from 44 to 46.5. I know the secondary is depleted, but the number seems kind of high to me. But I'm not going to bet the game. What about you guys?
Yeah, go ahead, Ron.
Yeah, for me, I'm a little surprised divisional game that the over/under is that high. I really have to take a close look at that. A lot of times, 0-1 teams circle the wagons and they try to rein it in and not make mistakes. And Minnesota an exception. So I look for a lower scoring game. I have a lean on Cincinnati. It's contrary to Baltimore-Pittsburgh games where you just take 3 points and you run with it no matter what, and you're going to make money. You're going to go to the bank all the time. Cincinnati's had a pretty good try. I know you mentioned the Lamar Jackson stat, but in general at Cincinnati, they have played well at home in this particular series. And to Robert's question in the chat, where he says, what about teams who didn't use starters in preseason games? It really does vary. In this particular case, one of the reasons Burrow didn't play again for a second straight year is because he was hurt. And so it's not just preseason games. He's not even getting involved in practices. And so the rhythm and timing is off. Each team has to handle it a little different. It usually takes a good 30 minutes of first game action before we see the teams come together. And that's why, as Cris astutely pointed out last week, first half unders in game 1, pretty good value play.
I did forget that I did bet the first half under for a small play. It's a smaller than a half a unit. That's what I have. Anything on your side, Ted, before we move on?
I just have a feel, though, that Baltimore would have a tougher time coming from behind in this game than Cincinnati would.
Sure.
So if the
I agree.
Bengals get off to a really good start, they could cover that 3. But I wouldn't touch this game because it's just your typical AFC North early season. Anything goes kind of a deal. Jamar Chase, by the way, has an incredible, has a great record against Baltimore. So we'll see if they open things up a little bit with him too.
Well, I don't know who in the world would have possibly predicted that the Rams were going to beat Seattle last week. But they did
Not
pretty
Pete
well.
Carroll.
They did pretty well last week. And then San Francisco was a big surprise. I think I mentioned it earlier in the week. I smelled a rat with this Pittsburgh when they became such a public dog, but I still didn't expect them to basically paste Pittsburgh quite easily. So interesting. Both teams win by double digits, which is a very strong play against in week 2 when that happens. And they're facing each other. I guess by default, you have to take the home team getting more than a touchdown.
Good
Ron,
luck.
Ron, any thoughts on this before we dive in?
Well, first thing is when that line was 8, it was roughly around 8 at the opener. I was surprised. I didn't see that coming, that it would cross 7 in this game. Now, I understand.
Did you take it?
No.
Oh, okay.
I did not take it.
Okay.
But I'm surprised that it's there. I just wanted to process things a little bit more before I delved into, taking it. Basically, San Francisco plays very well against the Rams. They're a better team again, than the Rams. The Rams defense is still a bunch of no names along with Aaron Darnold, and San Francisco has more weapons than you know what to do with. It's making them all happy that the coach has to deal with. But still, the line seems a little off based on my power ratings. But power ratings is only 1/3 of my handicapping process. I don't go strictly by that. Were you surprised, Cris, at the line?
Yeah, I thought it was nuts, and it was bet. It was sitting there at 7, and then it was bet up from 7, and I'm like, geez, I thought this was going to sink a little bit, but I wasn't really that confident on it. And then I stared at it like some teenager in the nudie bar. I'm looking at the 8 for a day. Boy, is that strange, and why is it sitting there? And I just let it sit there, and I did catch the 7.5 for a small play. I don't have a feeling on either of these 2 teams yet.
But isn't there the old value play thing there, though? If you see a number and you say it's just a little out of whack and it's over a TD, don't you just sort of take something on that at the start because there is value, and then you deal with the rest later because you don't think the number should be there?
I deal in probabilities, and one of the probabilities that I would ask myself on this game, what's the percentage of chance that I think the LA Rams will win this game outright? And if that percentage is a little too low, then I may not grab the number like you're saying. In most cases, I am going to grab a number, whether it be over 3 mostly, not worrying about over 7. So I understand the rationale there, but the Rams played a perfect game in a sense for them. No turnovers whatsoever. And I think that's the kind of game they're going to have to play to be competitive against a team like San Francisco.
I think they have to play better than perfect against San Francisco. Seattle and San Francisco is an allowance horse and a grade 1 stakes horse. That's the difference.
But I want to say this to Chris's 7.5. I think it's the right side because Matthew Stafford, when healthy, and we talked about this either Tuesday. We didn't talk about it Friday because we didn't have the results on Sunday.
Right.
But we talked about it on Tuesday. Does he elevate to the number 1 quarterback in the NFC, or at least in that conversation? And the answer is probably yes. And although Pittsburgh did not take advantage of San Francisco's secondary, an experienced Matthew Stafford very well might.
Yeah, no, Stafford's still outstanding if he's healthy. And he is healthy, so that's great. The question is, do they really have enough? Is that offensive line, which they did okay against Seattle, are they going to do okay against San Francisco? I have a giant doubt there, okay? This is a total different level of team. and I wouldn't be shocked if the Rams got blown out at home.
It's possible. We've got 2 interviews. Which one do you want to go with first?
Well, since we talked in Rams and how wonderful their line is, the guy's going to have to protect Mr. Stafford, and Stafford doesn't have Cooper Kupp to throw to these days, but he's got a guy named Puka Nacua coming off his first game as a pro. And Nacua, how about second drafted, 5th round or later pick, the first guy to ever have over 100 yards in his initial game in the NFL. I spoke to him yesterday. Might be, he's a top 3 or 4 all-time favorite, and I've only done about 2,000 of these interviews as far as a rookie is concerned, and a raw rookie. He was so fun to speak to. You'll hear the smile in his voice in every word coming out of his mouth. Play it, baby. 19 receiving yards, most by a rookie in a Week 1 Rams history, and 10 catches, 15 targets. How much of that was in the game plan?
I would say a good amount of it. I feel like it was just our game plan that we had gone in with. I mean, the plays just seemed to kind of the coverages kind of fell to the way I was able to get the ball, but none of those. It was all stuff that we had game planned for.
So was Matthew in the wonderful huddle saying, "Hey, I got to get this guy the ball now"?
No, I wish. No, that hopefully one day. But it was sweet. So every time the ball came my way, it's always on the money when it's coming from Matthew Stafford. So he makes my job really easy.
That's awesome. By the way, how are your banged up ribs coming along?
They're doing good. They're a lot better. You live to see the Tuesdays with our off day, maximum recovery, get back to a normal sleep schedule, set you on the right path to recovery.
Welcome to the NFL, right?
100%.
So give us an example of what you've learned from having Stafford throw you the ball every day. I mean, the guy is probably a future Hall of Famer.
Shoot, I believe it 100% in my heart, but the precision and just the confidence that he goes out there with every day, it's something that I'm trying to build into my routine, and you see him put in the work. So it's like, obviously, I've been watching this guy since I was a little kid, so you knew he was already great, but then you get to see it firsthand of everything that he does every day, the preparation he has, and then when he go on the field and the way he executes, it just makes perfect sense because you see it all come together when he gets out there in between those lines.
All right, so on my behalf, the next time you go in the huddle, even in practice, would you walk up to him and say, "I've been watching you since I was a little kid"?
I think you've maybe heard it once or twice.
By the way, it doesn't exactly help not being able to play alongside Cooper Kupp. How much mentoring is he being able to do from the sidelines?
More than I think you guys can imagine. I mean, as the best communicator I think on our football team, and the best teacher, his ability to communicate and simplify things, especially for me, somebody who I'm getting a lot of information and being able to not necessarily dumb it down, but to help me understand it. And then the ability that he communicates with Tutu, with Van, with Sko, with the whole old line, with Higgs. So his communication is at a world, an elite level as well, just as his play. So I'm excited to get to talk to him when I come off of play, and then also excited to get down there and play with him.
Excellent. We're with Rams rookie, and I mean standout rookie receiver, Puka Nacua. Just had an unbelievable first game. And talk about the kids who came through on Sunday. You guys are the second youngest team in the league.
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool. Going back to who our leaders are, Matthew Stafford and Tyler Higbee and Cooper Kupp on the offensive side of the ball, and the guys who have been in the league for all of them 5+ years, and so it's some of them 10. So it's super cool to see like them, the new energy we bring as the young kids, and then the maturity and the confidence and the knowledge that they are allowed, that they have shared with us as the new guys coming in, and the ability for us all to connect and communicate, so we're all on the same page when we get out there. It's a work of art in itself, so it's been super cool.
That's great. A couple more things real quick here, Puka. How good was your defense in shutting out Seattle? 23-zip in the second half, and they were just 2 of 9 on third downs.
Absolutely unreal. You're reading off the stats. I'm blessed to get to go against our defense, and it's crazy because we get to go against them every day. So to finally see them get to hit somebody else, for them to break up somebody else's pass route and jump somebody else's pass concept was beautiful to see, because they've been doing that to us for too long. So it's nice to get to hit somebody to see them fully let it loose, and the work showed for itself. And so all those guys, the guys in the DB room, I think how much they've helped my game grow and my game accelerate because of the looks that they've been able to give me in practice as well.
All right, well, you can't party too long because now you're facing San Francisco's D, one of the best in the league. What does the film study show you on them?
They're a physical team. I think that's one thing that they've been known for, and they continue to put on tape. And they play fast, but I'm excited because I believe we have those same qualities. We're a strong and physical, fast team, and we're excited to put those things on tape too. So I'm excited to meet force with force and for it to be a fun one.
And a little bit of an underdog feeling in the room. Hey, we're going to show you doubters out there.
I guess I don't know. That's not so. I guess the verbiage that we hear around here, we're super confident. We're worried about us. Coach with me, we're worried about getting our job done and the people that we have here in our building. So it's been super cool, and we're focused on Sunday. We're already past, just like you said. We're already on Thursday, so we're almost too far to be talking about last week. We're ready for Sunday and ready to hit the field.
Good for you, Puka. Great to have.
That was some really good questioning. I think there's a lot to glean from that interview. Ron, you said you had some draft notes?
Well, I was going through, and of course, I've done this draft thing where I analyze the draft for the last 40-something years. So my notes on him were that he gives a solid blocking effort. He was properly drafted, and he fights hard for his yards. Straight line speed, so he's not going to, be separating as much. I thought he was a complimentary wide receiver, but obviously somebody, and you can hear that in his voice, the effort. I just felt it, and that's what I saw on tape when I was going through and making my judgments during the draft season. I think he is somebody who is going to help his teammates, and he's going to fight for every yard he gets because he's going to have to fight for every yard he gets.
How did you have him rated?
I had him rated 6 rounds, so he went in the 5th, middle of the 5th. So we're right there. I thought it was relatively properly drafted for that time period. He was rated. A lot of people down in that time period, 5th, 6th round, they draft people that are off my screen. So I had no problem with that. In fact, when I went over what I liked and didn't like about the Rams draft, he didn't even show up in that commentary because he was properly drafted.
Gotcha. BYU guy that was a transfer from Washington. So interesting where he started out.
I really liked the questioning here because I think, unlike those typical boring interviews that I have no interest in, I think what you were able to pull out of him is basically there's a free-spirited locker room. There's a good spirit. It doesn't seem like there's any tension. The great relationship with the veterans, and the veterans are being helpful. There's not a big deal being made that they can't beat San Francisco. They're just trying to take care of their own business, which is good. Everything this guy had to say really just, makes me feel better about having my little pittance on the Rams this week.
Well, there's something about the roster construction. The fact that they started out, I think it was 40 rookies were in camp, and now they're down to like whatever it is, 30 or high 20s or whatever it is. Bottom line is they're an extremely young team, guys that are unproven. We have no idea what they're going to do over the long haul. The expectations are if they do as we'll just throw Ron's numbers out. Whoever they actually drafted will fit okay. It's still not going to be like all of a sudden they're going to be a 12-win team. So, they look great in Seattle. They did things right. They didn't turn the ball over, and they dominated the second half. If they could do anything like that in this game, being at home, they'll make it a game. But it could get out of hand, too, because a couple of mistakes here and there. And, again, you don't have a Cooper Kupp to throw to. I don't think if San Francisco allows Puka 10 receptions this week, I think there's going to be a revolution in their locker room afterwards.
Let's hear from the San Francisco side of things because they have a say in this game outcome as well.
Yeah, safety Talanoa Hufang, who, by the way, played with Puka's brother in San Francisco a couple of years ago. So I thought that was really interesting, and he talked about that as well. But Hufanga is an all-pro now, and well, I got him, right out of USC, and now last year became an all-pro. Good for him. Let's hear about it. Ted in Los Angeles, great to hear from you again, man.
Great to hear from you.
Thank you. We had you on last year, and you were outstanding. And so, by popular demand, you are back for our network pregame show.
Well, that is much appreciated. So, thank you.
All right, my pleasure. Hey, how do you assess your Week 1 win at Pittsburgh? It's usually a really tough place to play, but you guys were outstanding.
For me personally, I think just being around great guys, great teammates, great coaches, going into a stadium with a lot of history behind it, a lot of winning behind it, and with the fan base as well. It's a very blue collar atmosphere. People that work very hard in the city, coaches and players there in Pittsburgh, and we're just very blessed just to have the opportunity to compete. And so, at the end of the day, we got the win, and we're trying to go 1-0 every week. But at the end of the day, it was an awesome opportunity to go out there in a very special venue.
Yeah, heck of a win. And how about your Trojan brother, Drake Jackson? 3 sacks last week. He had 3 all last season.
Yes. Oh, it was unbelievable. Super excited for the guy. I got to see a lot of his off-season work, and it just comes into fruition in the way he plays his game, the way he just strains to finish the play and the effort that he gives. But it's a testament to what he did this offseason, and hopefully he just continues to grow from here. But like you said, 3 in 1 year and 3 in 1 game now. So that was really cool to see.
Yeah, gotta love that. Well, Talanoa, you lose your DC, D'Amico Ryans, to his first head coaching gig in Houston. He's joined by longtime Niners DB Jimmy Ward. How do you guys not skip a beat on defense?
Honestly, Jimmy Ward is an amazing player. Having a great coach in D'Amico. At the end of the day, we got to just continue to keep the standard. Next man up, and the guy that comes in and whoever fills that void in that role has to play with their hair on fire and be a part of this defense. You have to run to the ball, and you got to hit as violently as possible. And so we got guys that can do that, and guys that are bought into the system. And like I said, we just can't skip a beat. So we just got to keep moving forward and keep the standard.
And one new guy who moved in.
Anything left out on there? We want to kind of cut this a little bit.
Well, there's a lot left out. We talked about the loss of D'Amico Ryans and how that might have affected their defensive side of the ball, and they haven't. Steve Wilkes has taken over. He could be a head coach. So we're talking about a real high-quality guy there. They haven't skipped the beat whatsoever. Just the fact that he mentioned how Christian McCaffrey is like the most hardest-working guy he's ever seen. He's the most incredible player all around that they could ever imagine. And as good as he looks to everybody, he's much better. I mean, he's that good and that important, and they use him in so many different ways. We also talked about how Brock Purdy has become a leader in such a short time, and he's also an incredible worker. He's like just into the video nonstop, and this kid doesn't make mistakes. He has played. We joked. I said if I was Mr. Irrelevant, I would have that. I would have a sign over my locker saying Mr. Irrelevant, and I'm now Mr. 6-0 Irrelevant in the regular season. So the guy's been really clean. That's the word I like to use. The guy doesn't turn the ball over. He doesn't make mistakes. He is smooth. He looks like he's been there for 5 years. It's incredible.
Yeah. So the question on Ward, although he didn't give the answer, I wanted him to go in a little bit more detail in terms of that particular question, because they allowed 31 out of 46, I believe, to Pittsburgh in the 30-7 game. And I think you're going to see that from San Francisco all year long. I think you're going to see Stafford complete a high percentage of passes. Hint at potential props for this week, for example. But I just think that secondary is going to be vulnerable without Ward. You mentioned briefly about McCaffrey, and that's really an X factor in this game, because given the fact there's also Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk, and Elijah Mitchell and George Kittle on the roster, how do you stop McCaffrey? I think that's going to be the dilemma for every single team. And that's why, as I throw it over to Cris, one final thought for me on this game is, why is the total so low?
I was just going to comment that right before we went on, I placed a little bit on the over. It does seem low. I think there's going to be success on both sides of the ball. The interview, again, I think was very similar to the first one, where upbeat, no pressure, all is good. Pretty much what we would expect out of that San Francisco locker room.
Well, all is good.
Yeah, it is.
They're 1-0, and they destroyed Pittsburgh. So there should be nothing negative there coming. But what I'm thinking about McCaffrey, one of the things that Hufanga mentioned was his pass catching ability. He said we didn't need to do that in this game because he ran the ball so well, So that's going to be all a part of, whenever they're in a tight situation, all they got to do is throw it to Christian. CMC is going to do his thing all night long.
Yeah, good point.
Well, we went through those two games. We've got a couple of questions in there I want to get to. We will get to. You wanted to talk about why nobody subscribed. No, I'm just kidding. You wanted to talk about how much should we factor in week 1 injuries into our week 2 handicapping, and is it different than the latter weeks?
Each week, what I would like to try to do, thank you for putting the banner up, is just throw 2 or 3 questions out there, time permitting, so that we could just kind of brainstorm and give some info, some insight to our listeners and our people who are watching us live or later on. In this particular case, I guess I'll start for this one. I factor in cluster injuries all the time, such as Baltimore's cluster injuries and so on and so forth. 2 missing was it Pittsburgh offensive linemen? Who were the late scratches?
That was New England.
New England, yeah. And that kind of hurt the start. We talked about that on Tuesday. They just got off to a slow start, and then they beat Philadelphia the rest of the way, which didn't matter because they lost the game. So I am looking at in injuries, hamstring injuries. Ted and I have talked about this a lot. The ones that happen week 0, week 1, week 2, they take a full 2 weeks, in my opinion. And I'm only playing a doctor for this video, but 2 to 3 weeks really before they're fully healed, because they didn't get enough preseason snaps. They're not playing all 65 snaps a game like they are when the regular season hits. I pay attention to hamstring injuries early. I pay less attention to them later on.
And more of them are happening now, I think, because of the structure of the preseason and how these guys are not truly football ready when the games really count.
Yeah, but the problem's the coaching, because, what are you supposed to do? As a Lions fan, I wanted everybody to sit out and play nearly nothing. As a Rams backer, game 1, I didn't want Kupp to get injured in preseason. I wanted him good to go against Seattle. So it's a fine line.
But he didn't get injured in a game, though. He just got injured in practice.
Is a fine line.
Line. But some of these guys are getting injured in games. But so it would be nice to just get them into a little bit of shape. I think it's the coaches. I think it's clear that if they don't play at all, that the performance looks like a preseason game. And we saw too many of those games last week. And the game last night, that's game 2. And both of those teams, neither of them were impressive at all. Silly mistakes. And it's just strange. It seems like the quality of play this year is down.
1 week, overreaction, week 2.
Well, yeah. I'm just saying overall.
I know.
We're not making judgment on the teams or something,
right.
But it just the radar is going off. The quality of play is not there. I haven't seen Tua stands out as just amazing last week, and Swift was great yesterday. And there's a handful of players, but when you look at the teams, even the larger victories were not impressive.
That leads right into question number 2. Put up question number 2.
Where did it go? I think I accidentally deleted it.
Is that a hint?
Well, question number 2 had to do with quarterbacks. And if I recall correctly, it had to do with whether or not we expected the quarterback performance of week 1, which was shoddy at best. There were winning quarterbacks putting up 103 yards and 112 yards, for goodness sakes.
82
whether
yards.
we thought this is going to carry into week 2. And certainly for Jalen Hurts wasn't sharp, and Kirk Cousins couldn't handle the snap, it looked like, for a while, and his offensive line let him down. So you guys go first. What do you expect from quarterback play week 2?
Well, I expect them to definitely improve a little bit every week. By 3 or 4, we should be preferably back to normal. I was going to mention for the other question we had to sort of carry over into this one. During the week, I spoke to 88-year-old John Robinson, the former Rams head coach and USC head coach. He lives down in Baton Rouge these days. And we talked a little bit about how teams are not ready to play anymore for week 1. And part of that is exactly what we're talking about. And certainly, of course, the quarterbacks, you could practice all you want, but it's not a game. And to me, if you're not going to play in a real practice game, a real exhibition game, maybe they should have 1 or 2 more of those. You get 2 teams together on the field and you're doing more scrimmage type of stuff. So week 1, you are sharper. They're not sharp. And that's all that matters. You're not sharp, and it's not by accident. Okay. And throwing the same thing with the hammies, the hammy injuries, because you're not in football shape. They used to have 2-a-days. That was too much. So in the next few years, they're going to evolve and learn how to do this. But right now, they're in the learning stage, and they got a lot to learn.
Well, yeah, this ties into Robert's question exactly. And I think we all concur that got to get some playing time in. You got to feel the heat. And I think it's hurting some of the teams.
Yep.
Let's see if I can come up with another question here that
We got food questions.
Yeah.
I don't know. What's my favorite protein to put? I tell you what, I do have a protein that I put in my shake every day, and that's
we don't want to hear about your shake. We want to know about your illegal gambling and inside knowledge.
My illegal gambling?
No.
I don't have any. I can't help you.
This person wanted to know: do you ever leverage any of the information that you get into wagers?
No. No, because I don't wager anymore. I wager coming out of my head. I have thoughts to try and help out the general public. That's it. I don't. They don't affect my life whatsoever.
He leaves it to us, Cris.
Yeah, I leave it to the professionals and the sort of professionals.
I need to answer this. This is a little personal because it ties into people that follow me, but because the betting ranges that I suggest for somebody on a bankroll, which we haven't talked about, is between 1.5% and a ceiling of 3.25%. So if you have $1,000, you really should only be betting $15 to $35 on your bets. And that's doesn't sound like a whole lot of fun, but if you want to be responsible for your bankroll, you really need to follow these guidelines. A lot of people go in there and they think they got $1,000 and they're going to put $100 on 10 bets, and that's the way you do it. So,
well, doesn't
I'm in the same ballpark, by the way.
Yeah, but doesn't it depend, guys, how many bets you're? I mean, if you got $1,000, you're only betting 3 games. You don't have to be betting $15, right?
No, that's the wrong thinking.
No.
What do you mean?
No.
Why?
Every game is a standalone game. You don't compare it just because you have 3 games one week and 12 games another week.
No, I'm talking about
never do that.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about if you don't bet 12 games a week, you only bet a couple of games a week.
It doesn't matter. You bet the same amount of your bankroll regardless.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that doesn't make sense to me, because if you got 10 games that you're playing, it's $15 a game. If you're only betting 3 games, why wouldn't you be? It's still a percentage of the bankroll. It would be $30 a game.
Yeah, but you're never putting your entire bankroll in. Why would you bet a different amount across the board this week than you did last week?
I'm not talking about that. I'm saying if you're consistent in your betting, you're not somebody who bets 10 games a week. If you only bet 3, 4, 5 key games a week.
But it's always a percentage of your bankroll.
Okay, well that's true, but the percentage wouldn't be $15 anymore. Though.
Sure,
if you're betting 10. No,
this is a framework for a larger discussion.
Yes, it is. I don't get it.
Let's go off that. I'll just make one other point on this.
What?
When we're talking about 1, 2, 3, 3.5% of your bankroll, make sure it's something that you're comfortable and strong in terms of your convictions, or it's something that you chart or you track. For example, for me, over-unders, totals, I use a smaller percentage of my bankroll for totals because I'm not as comfortable for totals. If there's something you're not as comfortable with, then lower the percent of bankroll. That's my advice.
Gotcha. Makes sense.
Any final notes for you guys?
Well, I always talk about like games that really interest us outside of the ones we talked about, and I think Vegas at Buffalo is an interesting game because you got the wrong team is 1-0 in this one, and they're on the road. And if Buffalo is truly Buffalo, and they're already a big favorite, what are they, up to 10 or are they a little below that?
No, they're down to 8.
Oh, they're down to 8. Okay. Well, if Josh Allen doesn't throw the ball away 9 times in this game, they could win it by 20. So I don't like the Raiders going 3,000 miles away, and they look very average even with a win.
My closing thought has to do with a pet peeve of mine that I think everybody can benefit from, because I've been doing this for how many years? Millions of years. And every year there are 2 or 3 times that I don't check a ticket and I say, oh, wait a second, I bet the wrong side. So I had 6 props last night and I thought I went 4-2. Plus I had an alternate line that was real nice on Swift, Chris's friend Swift. But I thought I went 4-2. I went 3-3 because in one of the props I must have pressed over instead of under. This is just a general reminder to everybody, especially those who bet. I didn't bet this late, by the way, but anybody who bets, they see a line change and they jump at it. Always check your wagers. That's just, It happened to me. And if it happens to me, I think it happens to a lot of people.
Yeah, too many. And Chris.
I've had a serious problem with this. In fact, probably at one of the highest rates of anybody that could claim to know anything about betting. And I graduated up to the level of, instead of betting the wrong sides, I just forget to bet the winners. And I realize I'm all excited. I'm like, where's the bet? Where's the bet? And then I'll see it on the screen, and it's in the screen up there is waiting for me to confirm. So it's like, you got to be kidding me.
There's so many checks and balances, and now they don't even do rotations at some of these books.
I know.
So you don't even, I have to manually put the time of the game so I don't miss it. And that's going to happen too. I may say, oh, the game's already started. At least you can bet in-game betting if your team's not already ahead 7-0. But there's, we're talking about strategies and process, and then there's the actual bet itself. So that's my last thing.
Yeah, we can't leave without saying congrats to Chris's former Detroit Lions last night. How about Swift and Hawkinson coming through for their teams? They were unbelievable last night. They're not wearing that little powder blue anymore, but what can I tell you?
Well, it's just one final thought on this week. I don't know what it is. Everybody's teaser happy, and I usually play a lot of funky stuff with teasers, and I don't have a teaser yet this week. I don't. Oh, I do have one, but a lot of people are going nuts on them, and I just have a feeling that there's some landmines out there. I don't have confidence in some of these no-brainer ones. I don't know what it is, like the Steelers. I don't know what it is, but I just think that somehow it's like a 23-9 game or something, potentially. I'm scared of the Browns. I think but it's not a matter of overreacting after week 1. it just looks like Pittsburgh had problems moving the ball, and now they're even in worse shape with injuries coming into this week. And the Browns should be able to run it down their throats with the hole that Pittsburgh has in their defense from last week. So,
yeah, but they're not playing San Francisco, so that does help.
Next week, New Orleans at Green Bay. At least one of these teams. I mean, we don't know if they're. What if it's 2-0 against 2-0? That would be pretty interesting.
Yep.
Two teams with very excited to start the season. Well, I don't know what we do with the Chicago KC game. We'll think of something.
Well, we know what to expect from Kansas City because they got Kelsey and Jones back. But good luck, Chicago. Can I tell you?
I think my favorite remaining play is the Lions on the money line. I think at the price of minus 210, 215, I like it. I just like it. Their Barry Sanders gold statue is unveiled. Standing room only seats, blue masks. Campbell requesting the fans to go nuts. When we talk about the NFL and home field advantage, this is a game in an environment where it's worth at least 2 points instead of the 0 to 1.5 standard that it is. I think it's a 2.5 point, maybe even as high as a 3 point advantage. And, Seattle's got a cluster injuries. Geno Smith has just not been the same even at last season. And it looks evident that
one game.
We're not going to see it. No, but we saw the end of last season. He was kind of very average.
Look,
Seattle as a team folded.
If he
got
does
double revenge with Seattle too.
If he doesn't turn the ball over, they're in this game, and that's the bottom line. But the Lions are going for their first 2-0 start in 6 years, Chris. That's all that matters. 6 years. How do you feel about that? No panic yet?
I think
the math question here is, again, if you like Detroit and you're willing to lay minus 210, don't come back and say, I think they have a 65% chance of winning or something like that, because that math will not play out as well. You have to believe that they're going to win roughly 4 out of 5 times to have a margin for yourself. That's what Cris is saying, that's what I'm reading that you're saying, is that 4 out of 5 times they play, the Lions will win. But if somebody else says, I think they're going to win 65% of the time, this is not the game for you.
Yeah. And I just don't want to monkey with the points because, these referees sometimes want to keep these games close and there's goofy stuff that happens. And it just doesn't seem right. It's just.
I got to answer Bertie's question. Taylor Swift. Never give more than 2.5 when she's at home. That's all I say about Taylor Swift. So write that down. There it is. That's the best I could do.
I guess that's about it. Have
boys.
A great weekend, Theodore.
Yeah, thank you.
Ron, have a good weekend. I'll be on Telegram with you at some point. And
by the way, I was going to say, I hope to get Jordan Love next week. I don't know. I'm requesting him. That would be great. So we'd
love that.
You would? Thank you.
We'd love that.
I would. Thank you. You're so good with words.
Back next Friday at the same time. Cris and I back on Tuesday.
Same bet channel.
Number of topics.
Same bet time.
See you guys.